Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, media is often called the fourth branch of the government because of its distinctive capability to influence and shape government policies globally. With its investigative faculties, it holds the potential to alter the course of policies by bringing the problem to the attention of the public, hence playing an important role in expanding the scope of governance. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Ms. Smita Prakash, Editor-in-Chief, Asian News International, to deliver an expert talk on the topic, Role of Media in Governance and Public Policy. Ms. Smita Prakash, ladies and gentlemen.
Professor Ashwini Chhatre, for inviting me to speak on the Public Policy Dialogues 2023. I'm honored that I'm addressing you all today and sharing some of my experiences which pale in comparison to the vast knowledge and execution of policies that some of my fellow panelists who've spoken before me and will speak after me have had. As you can see, I'm clearing my throat because I've come from Delhi and you know what Delhi's pollution is like, and I'm hoping that the policymakers today will do something about it. I've heard agriculture specialists out here speaking about the wonderful innovations that have happened. Please do something about the air in my city. I've had just a ringside view of public policy, so mine will just be about impressions and my experiences and very anecdotal, not data-driven. I wish I had prepared more as far as data is concerned. In the years of interactions that I've had with officials, policy planners, and implementers of policy, I've always encountered a hesitancy in sharing information with the media. It's changed by and large, and it's made jobs of journalists easier. I was just speaking to some journalists out here and some students, and I was telling them how it used to be. I sound a real old fogey when I say this, but in my time, it used to be really difficult. And when I say my time, I meant pre-Google era. Getting information, getting data used to be so hard. Because bureaucrats, by and large, like to keep data with themselves. They don't like sharing it. They just want, because they worked so hard on it, I think it's like your baby which you don't want to give away to anybody. It's something like that. So there was a hesitancy to share information with the media. It's as if the policymakers are afraid of letting go, even today. Because once you make something public, which is you give it to the media, you're opening yourself to criticism, and that makes policymakers very uneasy, especially criticism from the media. I'll tell you why. One is because they're skeptical of media's intentions, maybe justifiably so. Two, they think the media is not educated enough or informed enough to understand and interpret policy. Again, this is I'm not going to say misconception, but it's also this thing that, Arey, humne to itna research kiya, we've studied so much, we've gone to remote villages, we've gone and done this study. What are you? You are just a BA in political science or BA pass course, and you're questioning us. But just remember that your policy has to be, or your programs have to be understandable to the people, let alone it being accepted and employed. So that is why the job of the journalist is to ask that. I'm explaining something so basic, but the reason I'm saying that, which is so basic, is because that is missed by our policymakers. That they get into this bubble because they interact only with their kind. That's why. It's not totally wrong what they do, because there is a misconception or there is a lack of understanding about what the media's job is. Yes, it is to inform the reader, viewer, listener, which is all of us citizens, by reporting on government policies and programs. But it's also, it's one of the jobs that we do as journalists, but it's also reporting on public policy, and the media has the right to critique it, provide alternatives, and give voice to grievances and perceptions of the said policies. We've just heard about the pension schemes, and there are different views about it, and it's the job of the media to do it. But as soon as we were to talk, for example, just because you've just finished the pension scheme, if I was to say that this is what the view is in this village in Himachal about the old pension scheme as compared to the new pension scheme, you'll be certain that I will be castigated that, oh, you belong to that political party, they have fed you this information, that is why you are saying it. So nobody will give us credit that we went to that village, we asked the people, and this is what they said. No, because I'm not saying OPS is better, NPS is worse, nothing of that sort. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just giving you an anecdotal information about how we are perceived. In the job, we often run into conflict with policymakers who only want fawning, descriptive essays. They want articles, they want glowing reportage, they want descriptive interviews on policy and not genuine critical review. Also understand that media being media, we have column space which is restricted, television news which is a devil in itself, where we have to say everything in 1 minute, 30 seconds. The age of documentary is over. Students have very short spans. Most of them are scanning reels on Instagram. We have to grab that attention, and we cannot slam data down their throats. We have to make the story interesting. We have to make it sexy. So in order to tell that sexy story, we need to understand that. So this is not, when I'm being critical about policymakers, it's not a administration. I'm not saying the center in Delhi, the state government in AP, in Telangana. I'm not saying that. Whether it is center, state, district level, anybody. As soon as they get into power, and not so much the political dispensation, I'm sorry, I'm going to be ruffling some feathers. I think it is the bureaucracy. They view us with this prism of suspicion when it comes to journalists reporting on policy matters. Sometimes when taken on board, the media can play a constructive role. And I'm being honest about it. I'm not a flag bearer for my fraternity, nor am I justifying our faults, but I am saying that sometimes we can play a constructive role, as was seen when the Article 370 and Article 36A was revoked in Jammu and Kashmir. There was criticism in some quarters. Of course, there will be. Not everybody can be taken on board regarding every policy, and especially when it's something so emotive, something which has bothered our country for so many decades, like Article 370. There was criticism. But the government, what they did was, here was a masterstroke in communication. They took the media on board. By and large, they took the media on board. We were taken, some of us were taken in groups to Jammu and Kashmir before the Article 370 was revoked. We weren't told what's happening, but we were taken there. We met with people. Some of us have been to Jammu and Kashmir, we have reported, but there were others in our group who hadn't been, who hadn't seen the level of the problem, the extent of the problem, for them to understand. And there was this sense of hopelessness. Karenge kya? What can be done? How can we improve the lot of these people? We can't keep reporting, okay, stone pelters come every day. Okay, there is Pakistani influence. Okay, the people are unhappy. Right, there is law and order issue. Right, there is corruption at every level. What can be done? There are many journalists, believe you, who want their pen, their camera, to bring about some change. So many people were like, how to change this? And then this happened. And when this happened, we were given data. We were given information. Here is the data. This is the reason we've done. We had access to a whole bunch of people who had worked on this. And you saw that it was the entire situation. Of course, the ground situation was handled very well. If there was bloodshed, there was no way that you would have got a positive media story coming out of J&K. There was no bloodshed. And so the ground situation was handled well, and the media communication was handled well. That was a masterstroke, if I may say so. On the same government, on the citizen amendment laws and on the farm laws, you'll see how information was not shared on time with the media or with opposition or anybody. It was not handled. Perception management was not done adequately. And what did we have? The result was confusion and chaos. And unfortunately, lives were lost, property was damaged, and governance suffered. You may or may not agree with CAA or with the farm laws. All I'm saying is that so much of study you do, you come to the conclusion that this is going to benefit the country, but just the way you went about implementing, without trusting the people that you want that benefits to reach, you messed up. So what do we have? We had the government admitting that there was a problem with the way things went about. And I'll tell you, this is something that there is no harm in admitting that by policymakers that the messaging was probably wrong. When liberalization was brought in, at that time, the messaging had to be right too. Believe me, at that time, the messaging was all confused, but the media had a very minor role to play. So it didn't impact all that much. You cannot take those liberties anymore. Nobody can, not state governments, not the center government. There are some politicians and policymakers who are media savvy, currently especially. They know that media can influence policies in a constructive manner and not just managing perceptions. You have to have content right for messaging to be right. So if your content is bad, your messaging cannot sex up that content. So while taking media on board, while formulating policy, take them on everything, while formulating, while making your prepared text, and then during the process of implementation. Why? Because we are closer to the people than you are. That's the unfortunate truth, whether you like it or not. We are better placed to give you feedback. Yes, you will have people, research people, who will go to those villages, who will go to the towns, who will go to those specific support groups to get you the feedback. But we are the generalists. We are the general public response givers. So when we report, we will give you the general response, and that is important, especially for perception management. So from inception to implementation and further. And it's also a legitimate way to enable smooth functioning of the democracy. That's what our constitution maker said, that we are the fourth pillar of governance, not government, but we are the fourth pillar as has been told. It's the best practice of governance, and it must be implemented at all levels. On the other hand, I understand that the media doesn't give airtime and column space to policies and programs. The only problem is that, if the messaging is not done in a constructive manner, and I think that is what state governments have figured out now. So, for example, if they were to come out with roadways, if they are going to come with a network of roads, you can be certain that the Yogi government is going to get their media act together. The first thing that they do is, even in Madhya Pradesh, you can be certain that they have their media act together, and they provide, because media is a hungry beast. They want information, they want pakaya mal in most cases, because sending out crews is an expensive proposition. So you're getting that pakaya mal as far as data is concerned, as far as visuals are concerned, as far as information is concerned, and access. Speaking to those IAS officers used to be a huge task. People who are my generation know that. You people probably get it easier to meet with policymakers. It wasn't so. I think you would know what I'm talking about. The mistrust between media and policymakers is so great that, and it's especially at an unbelievable high. We are called all kinds of names by the politicians. Maybe some of us deserve it, I'd say that, but we're not all rotten apples. So I just feel that the policymakers who are sitting out here, believe me, I could take up many cases. For example, I was speaking to some of the students out here, and I was talking to them about my experience in journalism. It was a test of fire. I was, as a cub reporter, thrown into the Mandal agitation story. It was probably, my privilege that I did not understand. It was in the 1990s. It was way back. It was Prime Minister VP Singh who brought it. He announced it that other backward class and OBCs would get 27% reservation in jobs in central government offices and public sector units. Now, this was based on a study conducted in 1990. This is how policy making is or was. 1990 gets implemented. Morarji Desai was 79. 79 was Morarji Desai, so 79 and 1980 VP Singh brings it. There were pan-India riots. Students were immolating themselves. It was my first experience, and I couldn't understand. It was my privilege, I guess, that I had not faced any kind of discrimination in my life. I was from a protected caste community, went to an elite school, elite upbringing, so I didn't face, so I could not understand why were students hassled so much. I couldn't understand. I was just telling the students out here, it just came back to me that what is it that hit me the most? That it bothered students so much that they were willing to burn themselves. And I just couldn't understand. And then on the other side was these angry officers who were like, these are students, and saying nasty things. And then there was police on the other side, rioting, there was tear gassing. And for the love of God, I didn't know who to go to. I went to the Press Information Bureau. मेरे को मंडल कमीशन का रिपोर्ट तो दो, मैं पढ़ तो लूं कि क्या है क्या, what is it? Today's journalists, no problem, right? You're reporting on CAA, one click of a button, you can get the information. We didn't have that, and nobody was willing to give it to us. It was like government has said that this has to be done, it will be done. Whether students burn themselves, whether governments fall, it will happen. You might wonder, now VP Singh even then said that the immolations, the rioting, the anger on the streets was media generated. He blamed, till his dying day, he blamed the media for it. He said it was media generated. Maybe there was. He also blamed a particular party, saying that they are the one who instigated it because they wanted his government to fall. But I remember maybe 6 months before he passed away, I had done an interview, and it was a vulture interview. I was sent that, he's going to pass away, so do this last interview of his. He lived to do several more interviews after that. But I went to interview him, and he said that, all of you covered those immolations and those riots. Believe me, no government will be able to reverse this decision. Caste and community. This is something that is going to plague our politics for a long time, for our society for a long time, and Mandal Commission reservations is necessary to bring those deprived classes and castes up. And no politician worth his salt. Today he's saying that he will revoke it. These reservations will increase. They will not. And I was too young. I was like, oh, he's just talking nonsense. That's not going to happen. All these top-level politicians are saying they're going to take it off. How can it be? He was right. He passed away. He didn't live to see that, but it happened. It happened. What I'm trying to say is that, had he taken the media on board, explained it to those cub reporters who did not understand, and where did those reporters come from? Most of the reporters, television reporters at that time, came from the kind of background that I did come from NDTV, that's all. I think Aaj Tak had just started, if I'm not mistaken, in the 90s. We were all from privileged backgrounds. Where were the reporters from the oppressed classes which understood the need for reservations? They weren't there. Their voices were not heard in the media. There was no Lallan Top. There was nothing of that sort. There was none of the YouTube reporters that you're talking about today. So the entire reportage was colored. If only the government had taken the media on board. When I speak about my privileged background, many of you might be feeling this cringing sense that, oh, look at her, she's boasting. I'm not boasting. I'm telling you what I lacked as a reporter. And when I went to speak to those policy makers, how difficult it was for me to get a different perspective, because the kind of talks that you're having, we didn't have the privilege of those talks. We didn't have the privilege of educationists who explained different perspectives to us. So policymakers also there was a prism, there was a bubble that they were working on. There weren't studies like there are right now. I just feel that when people talk about how India has moved forward, I am lucky to be living in the times to have seen that lack of information, and today this proliferation of information. Of course, the lack of interest, even though there is so much information out there, that is also something which makes me sad. Even at that time, I must tell you that politics influences media, and that media reports with a colored prism when it comes to policy matters. I'm not denying that happens. History will bear me out when we talk about several instances. For example, when the nuclear deal happened, the Prime Minister was ready to stake his government at that time. There was an interview which was done by a Telegraph reporter, Manini. She interviewed Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. He staked his all. When even his own government, I'm giving you anecdotal data simply because I think that is my only strength, not data. So at that time, I had gone with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to America when he was striking that deal. And his own government was not in favor of it. The NAC was not on board, the advisory committee. Nobody was on board in his own party, let alone the parties which were supporting his government, the left-leaning parties, of course. And they kept saying that this government is selling India to America. And I remember being on Air India One, and again I'm saying, I'm not boasting, we were a bunch of journalists who were on board with Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, and he was there, he was looking so shaken, because he genuinely believed that this was for the good of the country, and this was this one opportunity that we have to strike it. And recently on my podcast, there was a specialist who said that anybody opposing the nuclear deal, it was high treason that he was committing. That was one view too. But here was a Prime Minister who battled all odds, and he was trying to convince us to tell the media that don't just keep asking me that X says this and Y says this and what is my response. And I did exactly that, because that is what media does. So my question to him, which figured in the movie which was made on him, Accidental Prime Minister, was also this, where I said that the accusation against you is that you're selling out India. And his response was not all that great, because Dr. Manmohan Singh is not exactly, a good communicator. But then it was okay. He said that, I head a government which has a legacy of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru as part of our legacy, and we will never sell out India's interests. But when he was asked by Manini, the Telegraph reporter, that your government might fall as a result of this nuclear deal, he said, so be it. Find me a Prime Minister who would do that. He might be criticized for a whole host of issues. I did ask him once about this trickle-down effect, when I told him that, this trickle-down economics, kahan pe chal raha hai? This Naxal issue was so big at that time. And I was like, it's not. If you go to those areas, you see Chhattisgarh and you see the poverty that is there, your trickle-down economics is not working. But he believed in it, and he really, really believed that it would happen, and the nuclear deal too. Finally, he was able to get on board. And what happened? How did he get on board? Did he get it on board because of communication? I've been talking about how to take media on board, how to take the opposition on board. How? How did he get it? Amar Singh. It was Amar Singh. When you write India-US relations, there won't even be a footnote on Amar Singh. Everybody thinks of him as a wheeler-dealer politician. Maybe he was, I'm not saying he wasn't. But a Prime Minister needed the help of a so-called wheeler-dealer politician to put forward a policy in this country, the nuclear deal. He needed his help. Google and see, India-US nuclear deal, will there be a mention of Amar Singh? No, there won't be. I'm just trying to say how difficult it is for governments to push policy through in this country. And we won't even know. Research scholars probably won't even know, because how will you research this? You will not know this, that this is how he got help. He got Mulayam Singh, against whom, by the way, there used to be an IB report at one point of time, probably got buried, that he was he had Pakistani connections. There was that too against him. So these are the two men who helped in pushing the India-US nuclear deal, the 1-2-3 deal, which ended our nuclear apartheid, this country's nuclear apartheid, got us access to technology which we wouldn't have without that, which got countries talking to us, which got Europe to see us through a different eyes. Who was it? Was it a communication, a juggernaut that went through? Probably. That's what he said, that if need be, we need to talk to people who might be considered unscrupulous by our National Advisory Committee, but we need them. So there were these loyal bunch of advisors who told him not to speak about it, but he did. He went ahead and got it. Let me move ahead. Evaluation is an essential part of the policy cycle, we are told. We, in the sense, media is told. I've narrated to you how, you'll never be part of that, the media will never be part of that evaluation process. We were not. I can give you an example of the CAA, I can give you an example NRC-CAA, I can give you an example of the agriculture policies which had to be taken, agriculture laws. These are two things where there was lack of transparency in its implementation and biases cropped in. The effectiveness and efficiency was compromised. I know there are not supposed to be questions in my session, but when I went out, there were so many questions that people had. So I would like to conclude before my time is up, hoping that some of you might have questions. I'd just like to say that in a democracy, in conclusion, I'd like to say that in a democracy, free flow of information is important to the media. I understand that information needs to be held back at times, but I just feel that taking media on board will just help. There are bad apples, I understand, but in a democracy, media, good or bad, and it's never perfect. It's the most important and vital element as far as dissemination of information is concerned. I thank you once again, Professor Ashwini. I thank you once again, ISB, for having me over. If there are any questions, I'd like to take some questions, please. Yes, please, ma'am, go ahead. There's a lady at the back who has. The one in green. I'm sorry I'm breaking the rules by asking you to ask questions. I hope that's all right. Okay.
Great session, ma'am.
Thank you.
I would just like to make a statement. I wish you to clarify that for me. Media is confused with entertainment. Can you say something about that?
Yes and no. I agree that when you talk about media, I guess you're saying news media, right?
Yes.
That news media is confused with entertainment. So again, news media, mostly you would talk about TV debates. TV debates are one aspect about news. That's it. But because it is so compelling, that's what people confuse all news to be. That this is what news is. News is available in many formats. It's available to you via your cell phone. It's available via various platforms of social media. It's there in television, newspapers. You have access much more than probably I had at your age, where it was just Doordarshan. And those who talk about the lovely era about Doordarshan, how it was lack of noise, let me just tell you, Doordarshan News was written by government officers. In many cases, even broadcast by, the readers were also government officers, and if they were not government officers, they were on the payroll of governments. So everything was Pradhan Mantri ne aaj ye kaha, Pradhan Mantri ne aaj wo kaha. Nothing else other than that. And Tapman aaj ye hai, Tapman aaj wo hai. Today you don't need Tapman, you're getting it on your handset every morning as soon as you wake up. You don't need to know what Pradhan Mantri ne ye kaha, wo kaha, because you Pradhan Mantri apne aap hi keh rahe hain. Right? So you're getting all that information beforehand. It's just that you have so much of choice. It's your choice that you are watching the entertainment or entertaining part of news media. If that's the best part about having choice, move over. Don't watch it if you don't like it. And if you feel that they are dumbing down news, don't watch it. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Smita.
Ji, hi.
My name is Rahul Gosai. I have a question which is slightly more policy oriented with respect to media. Media is obviously the core pillar, as you said, for governance. But there is increasing dependence on for resources. Internationally, in Australia, in Canada, we've seen them basically, because there is the intellectual property involved and other things involved. Indian media is increasingly dependent. There is a concentration which is happening and which is evident, which is affecting the independence of media per se. And we see it, how the news flow is happening, how it has evolved over the years. So how do you see going forward Indian media adapting, considering there are some very small publications, big publications who are typically gonna if something like what happened in Australia, the competition law, the big tech integration happened. So how do you see that landscape evolving? How does Indian media perceive that scenario, if they will be able to benefit from big tech, the search, the Google and all those of the world? Basically a forward-looking perspective.
See, I really don't have much forward-looking perspective, frankly. It keeps changing in this country because there aren't so many studies in our country as far as media is concerned about laws and what should be done about it, right? That is why you're seeing when you talked about big tech, you're talking about competition, you're talking about lack of funds. Yes, there is lack of funds in the sense of when it comes to news. When it comes to the entertainment part of news, you will be certain that those shows will get sponsorships. But I was speaking to Anshi. For example, if I was to do a 6-part series on forest wealth, which is being used in a productive manner for people who are living in the forest, and if I do a 6-part series, one, look at the cost that I have. I need to travel to those forests. I need to shoot in those. I need to get experts. It means at least 6 weeks of work, right? I need a sponsor. Not going to get it. So that is the reason why news media, owners of news media are increasingly asking or selling out to big businesses, because it's not a model which is sustainable. So the only thing that works is that the TV debates, the 9 p.m. debates. I go on those debates. Believe me, why? Because those TV debates, the money that comes into those TV debates, that is what sustains the news gathering that happens during the day. There is no money for those documentaries, for those investigative reports that you're seeing at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. Nobody wants to spend money on that. The marketing guys in those television channels say, iske liye to koi paisa nahi hai. Where does the money come for that? From the sponsorships of those 9 p.m. debates. So it's necessary to have that so that this can sustain. When it comes to non-competitive, I don't want to make a value judgment on that you probably mean to say about the demonization of a certain industrialist, which is happening, that he's buying up everything. He's buying a TV channel, a newspaper, a website. He's doing that. It used to happen earlier too. It's easy to blame an Adani today and Ambani. Do you think that the Dalmias didn't do that? Do you think the Tatas didn't do that? They owned it, and to think that the Adanis and Ambanis will be interfering in editorial, whereas the Tatas and the Birlas and the Dalmias and the others didn't do it, I beg to differ. I don't think it was such a rosy picture. I'm still not jaded or cynical enough to think that the good old days were the golden years and now it is the bad old days. I don't believe in that. I think I am.
Can you take one question?
I can take one question. Yes, of course, sir.
Thank you so
We
much.
have one request from here also.
Okay, I don't know about the timing. We'll do it quickly then.
Yeah.
Ma'am, since
Of course.
I'm part of policy making and I've been accused partly by you, so I have first right.
Okay.
I am an ordinary citizen.
Yeah, we will get our rights.
Abhi Aam Aadmi Party is not yet come, sir. You have to wait.
Ma'am, let me compliment you for your
Thank you,
forthright
sir.
and as usual, your usual best. I chase you on your podcasts and I was just
Please
mentioning.
like and subscribe.
I listen on Apple TV, so I think you will be getting the.
Okay.
In fact, I like the Sohail Seth interview that you took for 1 hour. I have one suggestion that can it be 30 minutes each, maybe 2 episodes.
Okay.
But you said that media is part of, vulture interview, I like that idea. I don't know who is going to be the next vulture interview for you. But nation wants to know, one. And two, you said that the media is part of governance, not government. But some media is trying to make the government itself. Would you like to comment? You have the option not to do it.
Yes, we are accused many times. I've been accused too, as you know. I mean, you know my background. I've been also accused of being too soft in reporting. But it's just that I think people don't know that I've been reporting since I was like I said, since the Mandal agitation. I've reported for Japanese television, Singapore television, South African television, and believe me, and BBC, we worked with them too. So I have an experience. It's just that my reportage was not seen, thankfully, by hypercritical Indians. It was seen outside India. I've also reported for NPR News in radio. So nobody accused me at that point of time that I was pro-government or anti-government or whatever. It was like if I was reporting on, say, Kanpur leather industry, how it is, polluting the Ganga. It was that. That was my story. I reported on that. So I think right now everything is seen with this. Since 2014, if you watch my podcast, I've said that also, that these deep divisions which have come where everything is seen that either you're pro-Modi or you're anti-Modi. The centrists piss jate hain isme, sir. So I think those of us who just don't want to get drawn into this debate, they are the ones who are, who just couldn't be bothered. You want to call me pro-government, you want to label me, So it's not as if the BJP doesn't label you. They also say the horrible term called prostitute was brought about by a BJP person. So we are labeled, but I think, like they say, thick skin hona chahiye, journalists ko. We are human. Believe me, how much of a thick skin, we're not alligators, we are human, right? How much of a thick skin can you have? But we are constantly told that you are, Rahul Gandhi has sent you, or Modi has sent you, or so-and-so has sent you, or Kejriwal ke pithu ho, doesn't matter. We have to do our job. So,
as an ordinary citizen, I would like to bring about, I want to bring to the public domain or view,
sir,
a small community is suffering because of the bureaucracy or powers that be and the business, etc. Now, it's not at a national level, and there is no politics involved in this. And how can I reach? How can I take the help of media?
okay.
You still have time for such small issues, or would you like to focus only on national issues?
No, sir. All major channels, all major newspapers, they have reporters, cameramen, photographers at district level, right? We are bombarded with stories. I understand that. So if you were to call me in Delhi and say that, X village does not have water, and for the past 15 days or 15 months, and agriculture is suffering or something like that, what is the thing that I am going to do? Now, this is something which probably 15,000 villages in this country, or 20,000 villages, I'm just talking randomly, have this issue, right? But there are some stories which, okay, ring a bell. A girl who's gone to school. If I was to give you an anecdotal experience, I went to Bihar to cover an election. It was a boring election. Everybody knew who's going to win. So I had gone to an area which was a Dalit village, and there was a girl cleaning the place where the cows were, cow dung nikal rahi thi. So she looked about 14 or 15. I'm sorry, just give me 20 seconds more. So she was cleaning that, and I said, don't you go to school or college? So she said, 8वीं तक पढ़ी हूँ, उसके बाद नहीं. Now, it's a common story, right? Why should anybody be interested? Believe me, it was a hit story in Japan. Do you know why? Because I gave that angle. I asked her why. The reason she dropped out of school is because she has to cross over a certain field which belonged to the Thakur village, and once she crosses, there's no way to go that. She has to cross that village to go to the school. And while crossing that village, she's open game. So she's by law of that area. If the man out there wants to pick her, no way that this village can say no to her. Can you imagine the enormity of it and the privilege we have? Did we even think getting up and going to school in the morning was, it's raining, it's cold, that was our privilege. Whereas this girl couldn't go because she couldn't cross that. I didn't know that. So I stopped my election story and I did this story. it was this one story that I did. That's all. I'm not saying to you that I'm doing these stories on a daily basis. No. But if you find something, the best part is that you have your cell phone. Now, all of us are citizen journalists. Shoot that and put it on social media. You never know. Put it on Instagram. Put it on your Facebook. It might get picked up for all you know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.